When we ask leaders what keeps them up at night, the answers are rarely just about money. Today, we're going to be talking about the real fears behind the numbers. And by the end of this episode, you'll hear the top fears we're hearing from clients, why those fears are actually signals, and a few concrete ways to respond instead of just worry. So if you've watched us before, thanks for coming back. If you haven't watched before, welcome. You are watching People Are the Business, and you're hanging out with Allison, Jay, and myself, Dr. Vibe. So, family, what's been going on in your world since we last got together?
It's busy around here, that's for sure. We're growing, we're training, we're just everything. It's tax season, so much going on. What about you, Jay?
Well, I think your tax season thing hit the mark probably. It's crazy times, right?
Yeah,
But yeah,
absolutely.
my dad was a CA and it was tough, right? It's a tough season.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean things are a little bit more local, which is nice. Traveling is great, but traveling gets old after a while, so
Mm.
it's nice to be hanging out more locally.
Jay, when did you know that you've had enough of traveling business
Oh,
wise?
probably 10 years ago. I don't know.
Okay.
I'd be sitting in airports. I when you're going when you're going to the location, you're pumped up, you're ready to go, you got an agenda, it's all good. But I would say it was when I got to the airport that I started to get irritated. And it's like I want to get home. Like I need regular food, I need my bed. So that was about when I would say maybe 5, 10 years ago though.
All right.
But
Okay. All right.
I
Well,
love. I think it's the part where I love traveling, but there's times when it's like, okay, I need to get home.
No place like home.
Yeah.
exactly. All right. Well, let's get into it. So we're going to dive into today on People Are the Business. We're going to be chatting about what our clients' biggest fears are right now. So I want to kick it off and let's name what we're hearing behind closed doors. No spin. Let's just be honest. So Allison, when a client really lets their guard down with you, what are they most afraid of right now?
I think the big fear is lack of growth. That's, where are the new clients going to come from? Where is the next business deal going to come from? With what's going on in the world, certain industries, that kind of thing, it becomes a real challenge. And it's like, you know, when they're trying to do a budget or a forecast and they can't see that far in advance, they don't have that crystal ball. It's a challenge to try and shift the thinking to a more, let's set targets rather than be worried about what we can't see yet.
Mm.
Yeah, for sure.
Has that been a consistent thing since Syncopate has gone into existence?
Yeah, I would say it's pretty consistent. There are some people who are able to, you know, um, have faith and have trust that what they're doing is going to create results. And there are other people who are very like tangibly oriented and they will struggle, trying to plan too far in advance if they can't actually see and touch what's about to happen.
Okay. Good stuff. Jay, what about yourself? What fears are you hearing on the shop floor and in the boardroom?
Well, the shop floor, it's about layoffs, but I think it comes up to new business. Companies have been relying on repeat business for a long, long time, and new business is like it's hunting. It's not like repeat business. Repeat business you get if you produce it on time with great quality. That's great. But new business is you got to start hunting, and I would say that's a big challenge. It's it's kind of like surfing, windsurfing.
Mm.
So surfing, you ride the wave, you swim back, you ride another wave. Repeat business. That's what you do. And when the waves stop, you complain like everyone else. Say, where are the waves? But at least you're in the same bucket as everyone else.
Right.
I was asked to go surfing one day, and I was an avid windsurfer, and they asked me to go surfing, and it's like okay, so I liked it. It was cool, super cool, but I rode a wave, swam back, rode another wave, waited for waves in deep water where I'm looking down thinking, where are those big fish, you know? And I'm fearful. It's like, okay, I need to start moving here. And so it's kind of the similar. Surfing is around, you ride a wave, you swim back, you wait for the waves, you complain like everyone else. As compared to windsurfing, at least there's a process
Right.
and you're moving. So I think the fear right now is there's a lot of people that have been hanging on to repeat business, and now the new muscle that needs to be created on finding new business is tough.
Mm. Oh, for myself, and I'm going to come back to both you, but in the lens of the business person I'm dealing with is, startup entrepreneur, all that stuff. One of the challenges is daily cash flow.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like daily cash flow is a challenge, and a number of these entrepreneurs rely on grants.
Yeah.
And relying on grants is very hit and miss. And a lot of times, you're relying on what the mood of the prevailing government is. And if they're not wanting to hand out the grants, where are you going to be?
Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
Where you're going to be. And then also, I have a good friend who, well, Allison knows him, who knows a lot about restaurants. So in the restaurant industry, one of the biggest fears is keeping consistent staff, having consistent staff.
hmm
That's a fear.
That's a good one. Yeah. Yeah, for
Having,
sure.
having reliable people. And also on top of that too, is just that a lot of solopreneurs, they're burnt out and they can't afford to hire help. And they're
Yeah.
saying, and I tell them, you have a tough choice because if you want to grow your business, are you the person to grow it or is it somebody else? If it's you, you've got to hire people, but then they don't have the cash flow to hire the people.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, it
Now,
takes money to earn money. Yeah.
I think it's interesting though, because one of the solutions you offered up there was they got to hire people. You can, but I think one of the challenges is that there are people probably inside who would love to be doing something other than what they're doing.
It's a good point.
And I know we found in a few occasions with the clients where they found hunters. They found people that were naturally good at engaging and not afraid to engage in a certain way. And we're going to turn them into hunters. So I think there's a couple ways to skin that cat,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um, Finding new people or sometimes looking inside and say, okay, that person's good at this, but they can be great here, right?
Allison, you wanted to share, it sounded like you wanted to share something. I didn't want to interrupt, but is anything else you want to share on that?
No, I think people is another big area. As you said, hiring and retaining staff is a concern for sure. We're kind of talking about two scenarios. One where, you've got a solopreneur or even just a very small business where, you know, they need more capacity, whether it's to deliver services or just from an administrative side to kind of relieve somebody else so they can deliver services. And then you've got like bigger companies who don't have any issues with hiring, but it's the retention side of things that it's very costly to have turnover. And, we touched on that in our last session. So, to those who are in this situation of, I need to hire, it's a huge challenge when the cash flow is tight. And so it really comes down to where can you find efficiencies? What can you do without? Or do you have the resources to invest? Like what would it look like to bring somebody on? Could I get them paying for themselves,
Mhm.
in 3 months? So, give yourself 3 months. Okay, I have to invest and pay this salary, which, I'm pulling out of savings. Um, but then will they be able to pay for themselves because they'll be trained up and they can do what they do and now I can go out and earn more revenue, or can
Mhm.
they go out and earn more revenue, that kind of thing. So those are some of the, it's a fundamental equation.
Yeah.
You either have the cash,
Mhm.
that you're generating, or it's future cash that you're going to generate, but you have to pull out of a loan or savings or somehow finance it.
Yeah.
Allison,
Mhm.
um, what's the reality with small to medium-sized organizations gaining access for capital or debt from the institutions nowadays? Is it likely, or is it a tougher equation, which is maybe not as likely to ride out this wave until they can kind of pivot? What have you seen?
So most of the businesses that I work with are quite small and are growing, and they are not always able to get what they need from the banks just because of their size or the
Mhm.
length of their history, etc. A lot of them will turn to BDC to get term loans, which is higher interest rate, but it's basically the government trying to encourage and support small businesses, which is good. Um, so it's hard to say from my perspective because I'm not really seeing what the major banks are doing. What I see are companies that are growing, and once they have some profits under their belt, they can go to the bank. I always tell them, go and get a line of credit before you need it. Like while your
Yeah.
while your financials look really good, before you start to grow and your margins get slimmer, or maybe you even have to run a loss for a little bit while you're investing in that growth, go and get the line of credit now, even if you don't use it. But a
Hmm.
line of credit is such a huge tool for small businesses, but large businesses too. What are you seeing, Jay?
Well, I see them tapping out the institutions, and I see their hope turning towards grants and things like that. And um, I'm not seeing a huge, I'll say, turner or execution on the grants. Some people get lucky and can kind of tap into them, but it's a tough haul. So what I've kind of directed them towards sometimes is somebody who's an expert on grant writing, because there's just like there's certain words that the grant people are looking for. So yeah, I find them really relying on more grants right now, but they're not easy to. That's not easy for sure.
Mhm.
Uh, I won't get too deep in the woods on this one, but there's also another fear that I hear on an ongoing basis, fear of letting go and letting other people do it,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes,
right?
that's
Letting
a
it
big one
go.
too.
But that's for another episode. We could spend a whole day on that one. So I'm gonna transition. Let's talk about what those fears are really about. So let's go underneath the fears. What are these worries really telling us about the business and its leadership? So, Allison, I want to start with you. When a client says, I'm afraid we'll run out of money, or they say we can't afford to invest in people, what's usually under that?
Well, I mean, I'm afraid I'm going to run out of money. That's a real fear. Um, but when they're afraid to invest in their own business, I think there's more to it. It's more on the psychological or maybe personality side of things. There's like imposter syndrome is rampant in the business world. Um, and it's funny because I think sometimes the people who are, the most capable, the most genuine, um, they feel imposter syndrome more than people who are maybe not as, you know, skilled or talented, if that makes sense.
You're
And
being
it just
polite. Yes.
yes, I am.
Yes, you are.
Um,
Good for you.
but it's so hard. Like, sometimes I feel like a little bit of my role as a fractional CFO is um, almost like being a little bit of a counselor in some ways, right? Like
Mm,
doing a lot of listening and then trying to, remind them of the solid foundation they've been working on, and what they bring to the table, what their offerings are, the value proposition they bring to their client base, their customer base. And when you can keep that in mind and have somebody else sometimes point it out to you, it's reassuring. And then it's like, okay, I've gotten this far, and my perspective is not, let's just throw it all up into the air and hope it all works out. Like, no, let's make a plan. Let's make that forecast, and let's see what it's going to look like if you do this, if you do that. We can create scenarios, and then it's like, okay, now you can dream, but in color, I guess, because you've got the underlying model to help you see what it could look like, and to be able to check, is it going according to plan? And if it's not, we can pivot, right?
Nice.
Yeah, for sure.
Nice. So Jay, I want to touch base with you. So when leaders say, I'm afraid we'll lose our best people, or I'm scared this change will blow up in our faces, what's underneath that, in your opinion?
I think what's underneath it is that a lot of them have survived on their instincts for many years, whether a small company, medium-sized company, they survived on their instincts. And they didn't have to survive on, instincts that maybe had some data around it. Now they're in an environment where instincts aren't good enough. So I think they're scared that, oh no, I'm in a new world here. Am I too old school to rely on my instincts? That I think my instincts I'm second guessing my instincts. And it's about kind of helping them understand, okay, instincts are good, but you need a little bit more data-driven or data to provide strength to the confidence in you moving in a certain direction. It's kind of like going from, somebody who's looking for a suspect, right? You got a sheriff who's got some instincts and they're down and wherever they are, sheriff's got those. And then you got criminal minds. And those guys are profiling. So they're moving from instincts to opinions to data and science. And I think there's fear with some of the people that may not have been exposed to the criminal mind education and universities or whatever you want to call them. And they think my instincts aren't good enough. I find often their instincts are pretty good still, but instead of their instincts might take them this direction, where they might have to really go in this direction to be successful. And that small change is monumental, unfortunately, in some businesses. And that's where it's like, that's, I think, what they're afraid of. They've relied on instincts, a little bit of data. Now we're in an environment where you don't have as much leeway. You can be wrong less. You still might be wrong, but it's a smaller margin now, and that's impacting some companies financially. So yeah.
Jay, I want to just go in a little bit deeper. When you're speaking with these leaders, do you have to talk to them about having an unclear strategy, broken processes, no time with the front line, fear of conflict? Does those things ever come up in conversations in situations like this with the leaders you assist?
So I never talk to them about that, because even if that's in my mind, the last thing these people want to hear is what they're not good at. They've reached out, they're interested in some, support. So really I talk about not lack of strategy or things like that. I said, okay, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And it kind of becomes more like a menu. And it's like, I haven't thought about those 4 things, but I don't want to eat all 4 of them, but I like this one. Okay. Let's talk about this a little bit. So I don't approach it where, I'm assessing and this is broken. It's really just not my approach, because first off, I have some empathy that I haven't lived in their environment. So I'm not the expert here in their environments. So it's about kind of identifying or sharing ways in which to move forward.
Right.
And then they kind of hone in on, hey, that one looks, yeah, we got to focus on that. And usually the one they pick, their instincts are pretty good. So instinctively they know, yeah, that one looks really good. And then I help, and then I'll ask, okay, what have you done in the past? And they say, well, I've tried this and this and it didn't work. Okay. How about let's take a look at doing it this way? Oh, yeah, that seems a lot easier. And it's like, okay. And then we move forward.
Nice. I'll chime in with the level of business person I'm assisting or trying to assist. The biggest challenge is a lot of times it's the first time they're jumping into business. So
Mm,
they're
yeah.
already entering in something they're not experienced at. A lot of entrepreneurs that I associate with, they're first generation entrepreneurs.
Mm.
So right there,
A special breed.
solid in the chameleon. And I piggyback on what Allison says about, you know, being a counselor. Like there's a lady I've been assisting for about 2 years now, and she always calls me and always asks my advice. And I'm saying, and it always is a process where I question her back. Just Dr. Vibe, I don't like when you ask me questions. Just tell me what to
Mm.
do.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. And I'm saying, but the thing is, you're not going to grow unless you know, figure it out on your end. And she goes, I know what you're going to do. I know. I said, but you're still calling me. Right. At the end, but a lot of, and I think as with the current economic conditions, we're going to see even more entrepreneurs coming out. So it's going to be even more of a challenge, but the lack of experience and also again their self-esteem. You know, to number them, depending, I say failure isn't a moment. Failure is a moment. It's not a person. So
Yeah.
hey, you made a mistake, and as you just said, Jay, there, I say, okay, we know what didn't work. Are you able to take a look at something that may work?
Absolutely.
Depending on their circumstances, especially economically. But it's for me in the area is that lack of experience. They've never done it before, and they think it's one step to paradise and go, reality check. There's going to be
Mhm.
bumps along the way. All right. Anything else you want to add on before we move on to the next section? Anything else?
Well, I'm
All
just
right.
curious, like, because we all deal, the three of us deal with different sizes of business.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Vibe, you just described somebody who's a solopreneur, first time entrepreneur, first generation entrepreneur. My clients tend to be like they've already maybe reached like the 10-person,
Right.
staff, and maybe 5 to like 40 staff. And Jay, you're dealing with, that much larger clients. So what I was thinking about while I was listening to you both was kind of reflecting on, are the stakes different for these three different sizes of businesses when it comes to, making a mistake?
Yeah.
Or, you know, could you generalize and say that it's easier for a solopreneur, for example, to make mistakes? Because I don't know that it is.
No, I'll, if I have permission to jump in. No, I don't think it is because a solopreneur, their war chest is them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. And it's a high stakes game. You
Mhm.
know,
Yeah,
a
and
lot of times, like you had mentioned, they're going into their savings. Like
Mhm.
if they don't get it, they're done. Like the list
Mhm.
of business in the last year that are no longer that I've heard about is long and growing.
Mm. Mhm.
So I
and
think it's a
that,
really good question that you put out
yeah.
there or insight. Different different levels bring different devils.
You know, right now I'm dealing with, some clients that are like 10 million. And in the last year, I've dealt with clients that are 50 billion. I tell you, the stakes are completely different. The multi-billion dollar company, they can make a bunch of mistakes.
Exactly.
And generally what I find is they throw people at it.
Hmm.
They throw more executives or more people at it. And it's like, that doesn't help with inserting more people doesn't necessarily help with problem solving. It sometimes makes it muddier. But the smaller companies, you can't throw more people,
Yeah.
and almost all the times, whether no matter what size, more people is not usually the answer. So, but the stakes are, you got billions of dollars.
Yeah.
You're going to ride out the waves. You're going to stay with the waves, right? You're going to surf because you can wait for the waves. But the smaller guys, they can't wait. And so they're really, I would say they're not, they're very, they're very vested in figuring out what to do, right?
That was a great question, Allison. You want to take over hosting?
No, I will leave that to you.
Okay, all right. Let's move into our next section, turning fear into action. So if I'm a CEO or business owner listening and nodding, how do I use this fear instead of being used by it? So, Allison, and both Allison and Jen, going to ask you, pick one fear you're hearing a lot right now, and one practical people first move leaders can make in the next 30 days.
Well, I think that the people first move that I always go to is to talk to my team. So no matter what the fear might be, is to sit down with people on my team and discuss, and I find that the transparency is appreciated and valued. It brings everybody in, gives them that sense of ownership. And honestly, we end up finding answers to things that, maybe they're short-term solutions, and then we have a longer-term solution, for down the road. But, if you keep that fear to yourself and it's almost like you can have a shame around it if you're not sharing it. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. I've heard a saying, and I think it's great because it really helps to open up your fear to the sunlight, which means to your people around you. It doesn't have to be every single person on your team, but maybe you've got a key group of people around you that can support you and help you figure out what to do. And then everyone's invested in it then.
If I can just get a little bit more from you, what would be one fear in the area of cash risk that you could advise or suggest to business owners out there?
So one of the biggest cash risks that I see is, the plans for growth and grow. I see a lot of businesses trying marketing of different types, whether it's SEO or bringing on a fractional, marketing executive. I think that ultimately consultation and strategy are huge. So identifying the difference between, as somebody once told me, marketing and advertising tactics versus strategy. So I really think that, taking the time to invest in the thinking around your strategy of how to grow, how to do marketing, if that's part of it, rather than the knee jerk, I'm going to run out and spend money on Google ads or SEO. That would be my suggestions.
So Jay, if a CEO or business owner listening and nodding says, how do I use this fear instead of being used by it? What would you suggest to them?
Well, I think the fear is based on looking for a magic sauce or a magic person. And I would say that it's a recipe with ingredients. It's a process is a recipe with ingredients and a sequence in which you put them together. So break it down. So if it's a marketing strategy, if it's strategy or tactical, break it down into ingredients and a process and a recipe. It's everything is learned. And how is it learned? It's usually learned by breaking it down to those components and the sequence and things like that. So, um, finding new business is a recipe full of ingredients, and there's a ton of books out there. But you know what you can do? Punch in ChatGPT. What is a good sales process? And it's going to come out with 10 things. And then you change the question from what's a good sales process to what's a good lead generation. It's going to give you a bunch of other processes. So it's not that simple, but it can give you at least a framework to start to think, 5 minutes ago, I didn't have anything. Now I got a framework. Okay, I don't really know what to do with that framework. Okay, maybe I'm going to share that framework with the people that already work for the company and see what input they have. And then at the same time, as Allison, you said, share why you're sharing it. Well, I'm sharing this because we're dying in new business, guys, and we got to turn that around. So there's a little bit of vulnerability there,
Mhm.
but being vulnerable and sharing some hope can have a strong impact on a team as compared to just being vulnerable and not providing hope or a structure. So I think with a CEO, it's about coming in with a little bit of a structure and a plan and being vulnerable enough with the right people to say, have at it. And honestly, you put diverse opinions into that, 9 times out of 10, you're going to figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about people first, right? So if you think about team building exercises, they tend to be the facilitator throws a challenge at your team, and then you got to problem solve and figure it out and come up with something that's, with success at the end. You've got some stated goals, and you've got to figure out how to work together and get those things done. So what is this other than a real life team building exercise, right? You've got real life challenges, real business challenges, and you've
Yeah.
got, potentially you have a team. If you're a solopreneur, oh my gosh, I can't advise enough to have those mentors and advisory board members to help you with the brainstorming and a little bit of the problem solving and guidance. And there you go. It's real life team building.
Well, I'll just chime in here with the level of business person I'm dealing with most of the time or assisting. First thing is acknowledge that you need help.
Mm.
I think that's the first and foremost thing, to acknowledge that you need help and developing those relationships, almost having a pseudo board of directors of people
Mhm.
who can, you can go to, and they're going to be straight with you. So
Mhm.
you've got to be ready to take whatever they're willing to give back to have those board of directors. But I think the key thing for a lot of solopreneurs or really, really small is acknowledge that you need help. There are times that
Yeah.
everyone else can see you drowning and you don't realize you're drowning. Ask for help in developing those relations right from the get-go. And you're going to need people who reduce your fear in areas that you don't know. That's where you develop those relationships.
I think that's where some people struggle, and they struggle in saying they need help. So what I kind of suggest to them sometimes is go find some strangers, because maybe the fact that it's hard to say I need help to somebody you know. Okay, go find strangers. Find, pick some random people that you have just met that you say, "Hey, listen, I need to bounce out on some ideas." Because I think the challenge is admitting you need help to friends and family. That can be tough, right? Or colleagues that can be tough. So it's like, okay, see if you can somehow reach out to strangers
Yeah,
that have some orientation towards that.
good stuff. All right, let's do a quick fear to focus round.
Mm.
Here we go. So I'm going to ask each one of you to finish this, an answer to a really short sentence. First of all, finish this sentence. A healthy fear for leaders to have is, Allison?
How do I get better?
Good. Jay?
Oh boy. I don't know if it's a fear, but I don't know.
Oh,
Maybe
okay.
that's the fear.
Mhm.
Say I don't know.
Yeah.
And then at least bring some conversation on.
Yeah. For me, I would say a healthy fear is, what happened if I don't ask questions?
Yeah.
Okay. Next up, what's one fear you think leaders should let go of this year? Allison?
Fear of, am I not good enough?
Dr.
Want me to go
Vibe,
ahead of you, Jay?
you next. No,
Okay.
I'll take last. I'm still thinking.
I still hear it in some sectors that AI isn't going to impact my business.
Yeah.
So the fear of say that question again. What's
Yeah.
the one?
One fear you think leaders should let go of this year?
Hmm. I'm trying to understand at first the question. I mean, so I'm an ENTJ, so I'm going to think out loud here.
Okay.
I think the one fear to let go is around it's around understanding that um, things are things are not going to get better until you not admit, but until you recognize the where you are. So recognize is kind of like, when people say that I'm an alcoholic, it's like, okay, don't be so judgmental to say I'm not leading very well. And because that happens in every leadership, in every leader's life. In every leader's life, at some point, you say, "Oh, I'm not doing very well." So let go of that fear, because everyone goes through it.
Good stuff.
Maybe that's like I said, that's my thinking out loud.
No problem. All right. As we close up, what is a one sentence takeaway you'd like to share with our family, our audience today? Allison?
I think, I already talked about, use your team. People are the business. It's not just person. It's not just an individual is the business, right? Like, even if you're a solopreneur, you've got clients, you've got suppliers, you've got, maybe employees, you've got advisors, you've got a network. Just reach out, find those people who are going to help you level up.
Jay?
I'm going to go back to windsurfing and surfing. I'd say stop waiting for the waves. Learn how to windsurf. It's not that hard. Really, it's not. And, you'll fall down, but it'll re-energize you. You're learning something. You're learning a new muscle.
Nice.
And it's not as hard as you think. Yeah.
And I'll piggyback on Allison put in the name of the show in her response, but I'll say to everyone, or to leaders, or even if you're a solopreneur, you're not weak because you're afraid. People are the business, and that starts with leaders being human. So that's what I would end off with. So as we end off today, if this episode spoke to your reality, like, comment with your biggest fear or question, and subscribe so you don't miss the next episode of our great conversation. And always too, if you have any questions for us, please feel free to email us at info@peoplearethebusiness.com. And we want to say thank you for the people who have watched. We appreciate you. Thank you so much for your support. and more to come, and communicate with us and more episodes to come. So as always, don't just manage your time, manage your energy, and remember to give yourself grace, and we'll see you soon. Be well.